and we'll start recording. So, good afternoon or good morning, I guess, depending on what part of the world you're in today. Welcome to today's session. It's the fourth and final session in a series that we've been hosting between ourselves at Combined Knowledge and a few other organisations that work in this same area around business systems, and particularly working with Microsoft technologies and extensions of Microsoft technologies. Okay, so today's session, my name's Rob and I'm going to be hosting the session today, and I work here at Combined Knowledge. Just before we kind of introduce this session and talk a little bit about what's on the agenda and the timing and the general etiquette for the session, I just want to point out that for those of you that are fairly local, so if you're in England at least or nearby, we do have another round of sessions that are going to be coming up after this one. These are sessions that are also going to be free, and these are actually going to be physical sessions rather than online sessions. So the 24th of February will be the next session, and that's going to be held in Edinburgh if anyone's around, or if anyone fancies a holiday, it's a great place to be. And then on the 9th of May we'll be in London as well. Okay, so the sessions will be on a similar line of thought, but we've got different speakers and different content for those sessions. Okay? So just a quick heads up before we get started. So welcome everyone to today's session. So again, my name's Rob Pratt and I work here at Combined Knowledge. I wanted to have a bit of a grand fanfare for the start of this session, so I've got some curtains as though I was on a big stage. The good news is that's more or less the only animation I'm going to use in the presentation today. I'm not that keen on animation, but always one every now and again is pretty good. So what's our session about today? We're going to do 10 steps to adoption. And this should be relevant for people whether they're on premises or they've moved to the cloud, or you're in a hybrid situation and you've got a bit of both going on at the moment, which is how most of our customers are now at the moment. We've got some of our business environments are local to us on premises and some of it's in the cloud. Why am I a good person to work with you today and help you understand some of the challenges of adoption and how to embrace new technologies? Well, I've worked here now at Combined Knowledge now for over 8 years, and even before that I was working in a similar area. At Combined Knowledge we help people to understand their business systems and make full use of them. Okay, so for example, if you've purchased SharePoint in the past and you've tried to quickly install SharePoint and get it up and running without putting too much thought into it, you will have found that it was quite hard to make it completely successful, and actually there should have been more planning went into that process. So we'll go through and we'll look at some of the considerations so that we can have success when we're moving maybe to a new version of SharePoint or perhaps into Office 365. As a day-to-day job, I actually am constantly working with different customers in all different industries, from banking to retail through to football clubs and local councils, and we're actually not just looking at the theory of how these systems work, we're actually seeing the practical day-to-day applications of them as well. I like to learn something every week, so my favourite phrase this week is minimum viable product. So minimum viable product, if you've not heard that phrase being used at the moment, is talking about when we're developing a technology or someone's developing a tool, rather than developing a really complex tool over 4 years then releasing it, this minimum viable product talks about the idea of we've got the basic tool together, let's launch it and go live, and then we'll add to it later on. So that's helping me understand some of the things that are going on at Microsoft recently, where they're releasing tools such as Delve, for example, and they're in quite a basic form. And to begin with, we accept them as, you know, the basic version of it, and then over a few weeks or months, we get improved technology, improved functionality. So minimum viable product is a good way of understanding that. We get a basic product early, and then it gets better and better over the following months or years. I'm also a bit of a specialist in SharePoint. So, for example, if you go onto YouTube and you search for SharePoint videos or Nintex videos, you'll often find some of the ones that will come up first as some of my videos. I'm also a very keen athlete. So last year I managed to complete my first Ironman. Okay, so as we go through, we might see some references to how sport can help us with our adoption as well. So that's the quick intro. So then let's make this a bit more practical and start to think about these 10 different steps that you're going to need to help you. We already said that we're working with lots of different customers, so the 10 steps that we're going to talk about today are really varied, and they can apply whether you're in a different industry or whether you're a small organization or a large organization. We tried to make these 10 steps as simple as possible so they can be relevant to everyone. These 10 steps that we've put together are based on our real world experiences. So we've seen things that work well, and we've seen things that don't work well, and then somewhere in between. So these are just a snapshot of some of our customers, but we're working with lots of different people, and they're sharing their experiences as well. First thing that I want to do is to point out that successful adoption relies on us getting a good, healthy balance across a whole series of different areas. You can't just throw time and money and effort at one part of your process, one part of your approach, and expect to be successful. So, for example, here at Combined Knowledge, we're a training and education company. So imagine if you said, we're moving to Office 365 or we're moving to a new version of SharePoint, and all we're going to do is we're going to give Combined Knowledge our whole budget, and they're going to give us books and videos, and they're going to train us in every which way. They're going to be here with us for years and years. What my adoption scope tells me is that if I just spend all my money on training and all my thought and effort on training, okay, I'll get some adoption, but it's nowhere near where we want to be. If I then think about some other key factors and I start to plan and carefully work those to my benefit, so if I make sure that what we're doing not only includes a training regime to help people understand the system, we also show people how it aligns with the business. So we look, for example, at issues that people currently have with their business systems or the way they work within their teams, and we make sure that we understand people's, I want to call them problems. In a lot of businesses, they don't like the word problems, but I'm going to say today, since I'm in charge of this session, we think about people's problems within the business, things that haven't worked, problems. A lot of people you use the term opportunities, these problems, and we look to turn those into positives, so that hopefully the new system saves them time, saves them money, and all sorts of other things. So making sure that these new products align with the business and actually solves real problems at the business level. We also want to do that per user, so individuals on a daily basis. We want them to be excited about the new system. We want them to see benefits. Yeah, so we want them to see these benefits. So as an individual, that's a whole different ballgame. So for example, the heads of departments over here could be on board with everything, and they're really keen and excited about it. So you think your project's completely on track and everything's healthy, but actually it turns out 95% of people haven't even heard there's going to be a new system, and we need to find ways of engaging with those people. Everyone from a receptionist to a scientist working in a lab, you know, wherever we are in a business, to people out on the road, we need to make sure we've got ways of getting in touch with those people. So we'll talk a bit about that in a moment as well. And then finally, support. So support could be all sorts of different things, but one thing it means is that all these 3 levels that we've achieved already, we need to make sure that we have those ongoing. They're not just training is done by the 3rd of February and that's it, training's finished. We need to have the ability to maintain these things and keep the momentum going. Often the hardest thing is building the momentum, you know, getting people on board, getting the systems into place. But then if we can maintain that momentum, which shouldn't take so much effort, but it still takes planning and some manpower as well. The support could also be a variation of training. So the support could be that people knew enough to begin with and they were happy at first, but actually they're 3 months down the line now and they want some more advanced functionality. There's maybe things that you didn't light up when you first released the system, and that was okay at first, but now people need support to use some of the more advanced functionality as well. So only if we consider all of these areas, and we, I like the analogy of keep these different plates spinning, so if we can keep all 4 of these plates spinning at the same time like a magician on the stage, then we can have ultimate success with this. So my area of speciality would be the training, but actually we do all of these as well. Okay. So that's my SharePoint adoption scope. So then let's jump into, I'm going to jump off that if it will let me. There we go. The next slide you might not expect. I started to say it's going to be easy. We've got the 10 steps. It's going to help us. But actually we discover that when we go and visit customers, quite often they tell us things like this: I hate SharePoint, I'm confused by Office 365, I've had SharePoint for 3 years and I've not seen any benefits. So these are things that obviously are not right. That would be a pretty good sign that adoption has not worked, and perhaps all of the 4 levels there were way down. So the good news is that's normally when we start working with people, and then as we work through the education process and engage with people and get them enthused, and we see them saving time and having these safety nets at work, all the things that people want. We want to save time, we want things to be easier, we want to be able to recover if things go wrong, we want to be able to turn this around. But often, realistically, at the beginning of the process, people don't like the technologies. People don't like change. It's not specifically SharePoint they don't like, but maybe SharePoint will be one of the first things that will be something we have to wrestle with. So, having set the scene that we know what we're doing, we've done it quite a few times before, but we've got a challenge on our hands, so we sort of understand where a lot of you guys will be at. Let's go ahead and look at the first of these 10 steps. A lot of these steps you could do kind of in any order, and in fact it's almost iterative, where you have a big circle that you'll go round and round rather than just visiting these 10 steps one at a time. But I think step 1 probably is going to be the first thing, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. So the first thing is to listen. So very simple thing to do. It doesn't necessarily cost as much money. It's not an expensive part. Some of the other pieces are. So within the business, before we decide what system we're going to implement, or before we decide whether we're going to upgrade or not, we want to listen and look in the business, look within what's happening at the moment. So we want to see, are people using network drives? How does that work for them? Are people sat at their desks kind of waiting for things to happen? Do people have network connections that are too slow? Are people constantly complaining that their machines are broken or out of date? So there might be a lot of kind of red flags. When we sort of stop and we actually take the time to listen to people and understand how they feel at the moment about their business systems, that might give us, to begin with, some quite negative feedback. Often people might have positive feedback as well. They might be perfectly happy with their systems, but a lot of what we hear when we talk to people at first, before we've done anything else, could be quite negative. So some of the things we might hear, we might find that there's barriers. People work in different office locations and they feel disconnected from their other cities or other departments they work with. There might be limits to their software. So they might not describe them as limits. They might say, things are slow, or it always says that I can't do this today, please try again tomorrow. So a limit could be at the moment that we can't do co-authoring. So effectively that means I can't have more than one person editing the same business document at the same time. So if I'm working with a team of people trying to put together a report or a contract, queuing up and working on things one at a time is the way it always used to work on network drives. But in today's kind of Microsoft platforms, we shouldn't need to do that anymore. So we're not telling them that there's a solution right now, but we're finding out from them all the things that they think could be improved. Okay, so I'm not going to read through all of those, but there's some of the things that we hear when we talk to people. These are some of the things as a starting point. And again, people might not think of these as IT issues. They might think that other people in their department are lazy. That might not be the case. There might be a business system that if it worked better, it would speed up processes. It might not be a people thing. It could be a computer thing. And then at the moment, how do people overcome these things? Do they just deal with it? Do they just avoid expense claims like the plague, for example? If you've got a frustrating expense claim system, people will often not bother doing their claims for 6 months. If the system's easy to use, it's one less barrier. So we really listen and we understand. And that whole process could take, at least a few weeks. It's not just one afternoon. So you want to talk to different people in the business. Maybe you might talk to people that you think are the most experienced IT users to begin with, the support teams perhaps. But you also want to talk to the people that you perhaps now have the least experience or new to the company. What's their experiences? So the good news is the reason we're doing this is we need ammunition for our adoption. So if we now understand all the challenges that the business faces, particularly the ones that relate to the computer systems as we see it, we've now got this fantastic ammunition. So what do companies do with that? When they've got this ammunition, how do they translate that into a positive thing? So what we do is we start to think about why the new system is going to be good for us. And we're a step ahead with that because we already know some of the key criteria that our users are interested in. We know things that are frustrating them and problems that they have. So we go to this stage where we start to think about what's the new system going to do for these people. So at that point, we can identify maybe 4, 5, 6 key things that these people are looking for to make things better. So it could be improvements around document management and versioning. It could be more automation with things like workflow. It's going to be different within every company, but we've identified those. So at this point, we can start to infuse within the business. So it becomes like an internal comms process, almost like a marketing process. If we were releasing a film, we'd think about it in a very similar way. So the film doesn't even exist yet, or the restaurant we're going to invite people to hasn't been built yet, but we start to tell people it's going to be good. We start to talk about it, maybe tell them the name of it, but particularly we start to talk about what it's going to do for them, how much time it will save them. To begin with, it's going to be not vague, but not detailed. So we want to give them enough so that they can see the practical applications, but without having to show them the system working. Because at this point, quite often the system doesn't exist yet. It's being bought or built or some combination of the two. Some of the ways that customers do this, we've seen a couple of really good customers that were global customers. They actually put together a series of posters that were put up in receptions in all of their buildings around the world. They had a series of mugs created, a mug for every employee in the whole business. So the mug had the name of the new system and a cute little logo on. So people started to hear about the name of this new system that was coming. Cakes always goes down well. So depending on what sort of a company you're in, this could be another good way of getting a few more cakes every day. So cakes with pictures of the new system or the name of the new system on. So don't be above bribery. Bribery works, and again, it can be quite cheap. As part of talking to people about the new system before it exists, one of the things that we're doing is we're demonstrating how we understand the business. So we're demonstrating to them, at the moment we know the current situation is here, and we have listened to you guys, and we know you want to be over there. And at the moment we know things are not perfect, but the good news is we're investing time and money and effort into sorting out these problems for you. We need to stay realistic, so we don't want to overpromise. We don't want to say, you know, it's going to make you'll be able to go home at 2 o'clock every day if that's not going to be the case. But we need to find a balance. So we need to find the thing that's going to get them enthusiastic, but whilst remaining realistic. So one of the best companies that we've worked with that's really kind of got this perfect was a large company. They do all sorts of clever work with precious metals and a whole variety of other things. So one of the things these guys did was, having gone through the listening stage and identifying what people wanted the new system to be able to do, and identifying that the new system would be able to do it, they put together this really nice slide deck. And I'm just going to show you 3 slides from this deck that they actually used. So this was from a couple of years ago now, but it's still one of the best ones that we've seen a company create. So here's a good example. So inconsistent email systems. So I think at the time they had about 4 different email systems. So depending on which part of the world you were in or which facility you were based in, you know, physically where you were, you wouldn't always be able to easily email everyone. So there was a connection, but it wasn't easy. You know, it was an effort to do it. If you'd had loads of experience, it was probably okay, but for new starters, it was really difficult. So summary there, really difficult for me to connect and collaborate with people. So we can talk to people about the new system helping with that. We don't have to show them how yet, but we can talk about the idea. We know we're working towards a new system that will improve this part of the business. And then another example, still the same business, and again, I'm just going to show you 2 more of these. It's difficult to find information that exists already. So someone might have told me there's a report. One of the examples that actually came up during one of the training courses, there was a report that had been created in 1981, which was the exact same year that I was born. So someone knew that report existed. They knew it was on the system, but they could not find it. So this report was there. Someone had scanned it from the archives and they'd mentioned it in a conference, but they just could not, this other person just could not find it. So very frustrating. That's even worse than not having the information, isn't it? Knowing the information exists, but you can't find it. So partly that was because there were so many different geographical locations. Again, this company was spread all over the world. If I was based in the Cambridge site, I might have been able to search and find that report. But if I was based in Germany, for example, and I did the same search, those documents would not appear. There just was no centralization. Okay. So it's not that someone tried to hide it, but we had this challenge. So that was another interesting thing that was identified. And then a summary of how the new system would help. So again, it doesn't actually show any screenshots of the system, but it just talks to the reasons why it's going to help. And there's enough hooks here so that hopefully everyone that sees this slide deck, perhaps 3 months before the system goes live, all these people are phoning saying, when can we get the new system? Rather than, oh, there's a new system, I've no idea what it's for, I don't want it, we're going to resist it in sales. The sales manager doesn't want it, we're all going to not go on the training. So the whole thing turns around and actually becomes departments want to be the first on the training. People are volunteering to be in the pilot groups. We've not even decided that there is a pilot, but people want to be in it. So the momentum is well and truly engaged. And again, these slide decks might have been shared at the company conference. These slide decks might be running in the reception in some of the buildings and in the canteen. The slide decks could be passed out to managers so they could share it with their teams. So there's loads of different ways that this same message is getting out there. So some people don't care about documents, but the idea of finding colleagues that could help them is really good to them. Some people don't care about finding colleagues, but they love the idea of email being easier. So they've all got something to look forward to. So that was a particularly good example of a company we worked with where they really went to town on it. So they understood the requirements, and then they went ahead and really invested not just time but actually some money in that process as well. So one thing that can go wrong with this whole process of telling people why the system's going to be good is they might say something like, we've heard this all before. We were told last year we were getting a new system. It never materialized. Or 2 years before that, we were told we were getting a new system. We got it. Everyone started using it. And then 3 weeks later, you switched it off. So people have this system fatigue or new initiative fatigue where they just hear so many times over that they're going to get something that will help them, and then it never materializes. So one way we can help with that is, as you're looking to drive adoption, is to add some authority to this initial process. So one of the best companies that we've seen that's done this was General Motors Financial, so GM Financial, and one of the things they were able to do was they were able to find someone that was really high up within their organization, and they managed to get him to create a very short video that just explained to everyone within the organization how important this new system was. So I'll run this video. I think we only have about a minute of it here, and that's nearly the whole video. And this video was used during training sessions. So for example, when I was visiting them in a few different parts of the world, at the start of the training session, we'd show this video. Okay, so the video was from someone very senior within the organization, and it just kind of settled some of the worries that people might have. So you'll see in there, it's going to tell people that the new system is going to be here to stay. This system is critical to our business. It's not a flash in the pan and going to be gone next week. So that's the first reason you should invest in it. Also, again, it tells people that it's going to bring us together. So at the moment, as a company, if you feel like you're a bit isolated and you're disconnected from other parts of the company, there's this idea that it's going to bring everyone together so we can work more closely as an organization. So some of the worries that people might have, again, it's reinforcing these positives. So let me just run this. It runs for about 1 minute flat. So just listen to the wording of it and how kind of how powerful it is as a little speech about a new system.
Hi, I'm Mark Bull, President of International Operations, and I'm happy to introduce this TeamSite training session. TeamSites are a pivotal part of the ongoing Transition Services Agreement exit program. They afford us the opportunity to deliver a new IO service in support of our strategy and priorities. TeamSites will also enable us to collaborate across teams, functions, and countries, bringing us closer together in a virtual team world, essential building blocks for our continued IO success. The new TeamSites will be the home of our internal company information and will be used on a day-to-day basis by all of us. TeamSites are based on SharePoint 2013 and offer enhanced options that can be configured to best suit the needs of your team. Our new TeamSites will help us continue to meet company and regulatory requirements and can assist in making IO more efficient. Thank you for your support during the transition period. I appreciate that change always presents a number of challenges, but I'm confident you will now start to reap the benefits generated from the new team sites. Please enjoy the training and drop us a note using the team site email to let us know what you think. Thanks.
So it's a very short email. We didn't ask him to record the whole training session because he wouldn't have had time for that. But when we've got these figures of authority, people often don't get to even meet them, let alone, hear a message about some training that they're about to go into. So we found that this really added value. So where this added authority has come in with projects we've worked on, so where the directors, for example, are filling in their profiles and they're using the blog systems within the new environments, they're setting an example by what they do, so that helps, but also they're clearly making it visible to everyone else the value that they see in the new system. So that can go a long way to, again, reducing some of the negatives. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's another one of those things that takes a bit of planning, but is a very, very useful tool. So the big projects we've worked on where this has been done, it has helped. So rather than fighting with, again, departmental heads, for example, who might block people's access to training, thinking that their day-to-day work's more important, the system will be fine, we'll work it out ourselves. This authority has helped with that. So people.
Hi, I'm Mark Ball, President of International Operations.
Oh, he's off again. Let me stop him there. So some of the key words that he was using as he went through the session there: closer together, opportunity, day-to-day basis, challenges, reap the benefits. So he was really kind of hitting a load of good notes as he went through. If anyone's interested in that particular project that we worked on a little while ago, there is on our YouTube channel, so the Combined Knowledge YouTube channel, there is a session that we did at one of our conferences a couple of years ago now, but it's still, most of what we did in there was very relevant today. So on the Combined Knowledge YouTube channel, you'll find the case study GM Financial. So that includes a bit more about that idea. Right, so that's step 3, add some authority. So step 4, we already mentioned that if step 1 and 2 went really well, we've got people clambering to be the pilot group. They're desperate. They want to see the system. They want to try it. They're hopefully pretty keen, or at least some of them are. Maybe some people are reserving judgment. So if we're hearing these sorts of noises, can we try it first? What date will we get access to it? Then that's giving us a good idea we're on the right track. Some things to watch out for though with your pilot. If you're going to do a pilot and you're going to pick a department to run the pilot with, or a selection of people to run the pilot with, you need to be a little bit careful, because pilots can be a victim of their own success. So in a lot of companies we work with, we come in and we talk to them perhaps after they've gone live, maybe years after they've gone live, and they often say, yeah, we had the idea of a pilot, we went live with the pilot, and it was meant to just be for the HR department, but actually what happened was the HR site owners invited the whole rest of the company in, and we basically now have a big HR site that everyone works in, all the companies, all the projects, and we can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. So with the pilot, you need to be clear about some of the things that are going to happen. So who can use it? So you might say it's just for a particular project and just these 10 people or these 100 people, depending on the scale you're working at. Also, you want to be telling those people on the pilot what SharePoint should be for. So picking on SharePoint as an example, but the same thing would be true for Teams or Office 365 groups or Skype for Business, whatever it is you're piloting, so that they have an idea of the purpose of it. So remember, it's perhaps the first time they've even used it, or the first time they've used it within your business, so you can give them maybe an example of how you imagine it working, and they can at least use that as a starting point. So you're trying to influence them in the right direction. Again, we see some companies where still to this day their most popular SharePoint site is one for buying and selling things within the business. And there's maybe nothing wrong with that, but we want to try and make sure that the pilot group is doing something that has business benefits, rather than it just being fun and social, which is great. We want to make sure that they're effectively measuring real business benefits, rather than just things that are luxuries like buying and selling within the business. If you keep the pilot relatively small and contained, that means if there is a problem, whether it's a technical one or a user one or somewhere in between, actually it doesn't cost you lots of money and lots of time. Because it was a pilot, people's expectations should have been set so that Again, if there was a technical problem or a user experience problem, then people were lined up for that. Okay? So then hopefully we can learn the lessons. Maybe we didn't have the right hardware or the right licenses, or some configuration was incorrect, and the pilot's a good time to learn some of those lessons. Yeah, it's a sort of soft area where we can do that. All being well, even if there is a few bumps and a bit of a roller coaster ride during the pilot through the good and the bad, hopefully we end up with some amazing evangelists that are very keen on the system. They know more about the system at this point than anyone else in the business, and they're going to be some of the people that would automatically, even without you asking them to, be telling other people about this within the business. And you might even give them that job title, might become part of their role to be an evangelist of the new system. So it might be added to their performance indicators, and it could be part of their new role, as well as what they did before. They could become an evangelist as well. So it could be quite a formal thing. So you could call them power users or whatever you want, but recognizing that and rewarding them is always a good start as well. Again, don't be afraid to bribe people. Chocolate, cakes, any of that all works really well. If you are really serious about the pilot being successful, you should also have a plan to move any data that's created during the pilot into the live production system when the pilot does finish. So assuming you manage to successfully close off the pilot at some point, hopefully around about the date you agreed to in the past, then people are going to want all that data moved from pilot into production. So if you can have a plan around being able to do that, whether it's a third-party tool or a manual process, because it's a one-off process, it could be a manual thing you do yourself. Otherwise, people again could see that as a big negative, and they just want to hang on to the pilot system, and it'll be very hard to get them out of there. So having gone through this roller coaster, we then hopefully have, let's say, at least 80% success stories where people save time, people got work done more quickly, people save money, people connected with other people they'd never met before. So we have what might be kind of anecdotal, so there might be not consistent benefits, but as we talk to individuals, they can identify why for them it's helped them. So at that point, what a lot of companies are able to do is take that and put that back into a successful marketing campaign. So we can now say, for the sales team, they received on average 100 less emails a week. Yep. So again, you might have to look into our business systems to pick out those metrics, but if we could find that since they started piloting, on average, an individual user now sends and or receives 100 less emails, other people are going to say, I want a piece of that. You know, I don't want 150 emails every day. If I can get down to 50 emails a day, that would be like having a holiday. Yeah, and if that's every day, I can't even imagine how much more work I'll be able to do and how much less stressed I'll be. So we're going to take those things that might be anecdotal, they might not apply to everyone, but as a starting point, we can see it as a company, we're starting to gain the benefits. So we're going to pick out the best, and we're going to learn from any problems. So the good news is from there, I think it gets easier. So some of those things like the pilot is where there's a lot of risk. You know, people are exposed to the system for the first time. Have we built it right? Is everything good and shiny enough for it to be accepted? So, so that pilot might go on for a long time. You know, it's probably months rather than hours or days. It's potentially a big part of the process. So then some of the things that might be a little bit easier to say. So step 5, just checking on the time. So we've got about 25 minutes left. So we're doing about right for time. That's good. So step 5, one step at a time. So one of the things that's a little bit scary, not just with SharePoint, but particularly with Office 365 as a potential product, if some companies are coming in and they've never used SharePoint before perhaps, and they're coming from maybe even a non-Microsoft environment, they're working in a different environment, whether it be a Lotus Notes and GroupWise and Lotus Notes databases, something completely different. Maybe their emails was on another system, their document management was on another system. So if you said to them, today we're changing everything, they'd probably say, no, I'm not going to be able to deal with that. So a good phrase for kind of thinking about this is this incrementalism. So just baby steps, baby steps. So what it might mean is in a rollout where eventually we're going to roll out the whole of Office 365 or the whole of SharePoint 2016, we actually break it down, and it could almost be entirely separate projects. So actually in a lot of companies we work with, they break it down, and maybe the email and communications like Skype for Business as it would be now, that would be one team of people that would look to migrate and roll that out. And then maybe the OneDrive and Delve piece, that it could be run in parallel, but maybe delayed so that it goes live, I don't know, a few weeks or a few months after. And then maybe another project team coordinated all together, but different groups of people getting the work done so they can make sure their piece is perfect. The SharePoint piece might come along slightly after. So you could go big bang and go overnight, switch everything goes live, but that would be the biggest shock to people. That would be the biggest shock. So try and find a balance between, we've bought the licenses, we want people to now have this software and start the benefits, so we're keen to give them the software because we think it's going to be good for them, or we know it will be, and then trying not to scare them or overwhelm them. Yeah. So separating these things out, and again, letting people know what that schedule is. As long as we've got a realistic schedule so we don't stress the IT guys out too much. Yeah, so we want to try and make it easy for them as well. Often companies also separate these things out because some of the moves are easy for them and other parts of the move are really difficult. So often companies move the email first because that often has the smallest impact on the users. So the email is relatively easy to move from an on-premises environment to the cloud, for example, depending on what skills you've got and the teams that are in place, but relatively easy compared to maybe something like SharePoint, or if we've got databases in other formats or document management systems that are not Microsoft, moving them into SharePoint and into OneDrive could be a much more time-consuming, maybe a more technical process. So sometimes people are breaking things down to say, we've bought the licenses, let's get the email and the Skype done first. They're smaller units of work for most companies, and then at the same time be getting started with the SharePoint migration, but don't expect to be finished with that until later on in the process. In Office 365, for example, you can switch on and off the different functionality. So we can say when a particular user logs in, they get access just to OneDrive and a couple of other pieces to begin with. And then a few weeks later when they log in, we'll give them OneDrive and SharePoint. And again, we could do a marketing campaign around that. So whether that's a series of blog posts or emails or a series of webinars that you host, giving people that knowledge as we move on and we have extra functionality available. And then this one, I kind of made myself laugh with this one because this is true, and I'm still guilty of this one as well more than anything. So the instinct is when we have this new system and we're going to try and get people to use it, the instinct as an IT person still is to try and restrict it. So we often get a new system, hear about all the new cool stuff, and switch half of it off because we think, oh, we're not ready for that, or oh, we've never been able to do that before, I don't think we need it right now. Yeah. So I've crossed out the restrict and control. In terms of adoption, we're going to try and trust and empower. So if we've gone down the route of having the latest version of SharePoint or the latest version of Office 365, we don't want to switch half of it off. We don't want to restrict it all. So every time someone wants to upload a document, they have to phone 5 people and get it approved and printed and signed and scanned back in. We want to, as much as possible, as much as is reasonably possible, allow users to do things for themselves. So that still scares me as well. We do see lots of different end users and they're crazy deleting things, but there's lots of safety nets built into these Microsoft systems. So as much as possible, we want to trust people to do these things. So whether that means allowing them to control security, whether it means allowing people to we have a brief slide on this one, whether it means allowing people to share documents with external people, which is something that a lot of us are still getting used to. So sharing things with a customer or a partner without IT having to approve it. Yeah. So a lot of those things are possible now in the software, but a lot of companies still switch it off. So avoid the knee-jerk reaction of let's limit it, let's make it work the way the old system did, because that was okay and that was fine. We want to try and as far as possible engage with this and be positive. So I know in certain industries that's going to be even more difficult than for the rest of us, but again, we're working with people in councils, in finance, and even a lot of those guys where they have a lot of sensitive information. We're working with people in the nuclear industry, you know, all these different places where they've got some of the most sensitive information. Even they're embracing this now. They're coming around to actually letting the end users do more and more. We still have some customers that do use the help desk a lot, and that's great. If you've got the manpower so that any time of day or night an end user could phone you and you could set up a new password for them or a new user for their customer, if you've got the manpower to do that, don't get me wrong, your end users will love it, but most companies now do not have that sort of manpower to be able to take phone calls 24 hours a day for what nowadays are quite minor things that an end user could do just with a couple of clicks on a SharePoint site. Yeah, so try to find a balance. So in summary, we're encouraging people to be self-sufficient. We're telling them it's good to be a site owner. It's okay to share things with customers. What's the alternative? You might think that by locking things down and using it kind of the old way, going back 3 or 4 years, not very far back, you might think that actually we've got a more secure system. In reality, what happens if we have a super secure system? In reality, what happens is people use Dropbox and another product that's out there that they just log into, not with their business username and password, and they share things with customers and partners through that. So most people now would agree it's better that we're going to share things from within our systems so that we can have administration and audit trails rather than allowing people or kind of forcing people basically to use things like Dropbox or whatever the popular thing is this week. There's loads of systems out there that we don't have central management for. Google Drive's another one that came up yesterday. Okay, so that's a very big one as well for user adoption. Just an anecdote on that one, just very briefly before we move on. So just a quick thing. So often companies have the right idea with this. So they think, oh, we're going to trust our users. And an example that someone shared with me the other day, actually one of the speakers that did a session in this series earlier on in the month, she had a really good example where she's working with a company on change management, and the company said, right, we want our users to be able to work from home. We really trust our users. We've got all these employees. They're great employees. As kind of a way of showing the employees that we value them, we'll let them work from home. And then they put the guidelines together from working from home, and it said you can work from home, but only 1 day a week, and it can't be a Monday or a Friday. And the other days you can't be on holiday. So if you're on holiday in a week for any time, you can't have any of the rest of the days working from home. And actually what the kind of guidelines said to people was, we don't trust you. So the original idea of people are going to like this completely backfired, and actually it became a really negative message. So it's not a software thing, but it just kind of shows you, doesn't it, that if we're not careful with how we describe things to people, our original intentions that might have been good could actually be considered or looked on as very negative. So one of the speakers earlier on in the other sessions was talking about it. It's quite interesting. Okay, so let's jump on to the next one. We've only got 15 minutes left. So 10, this is probably my specialist area really, this helping people understand the systems, helping them to use it. So we're describing here as upskill. So upskill could mean a lot of different things, but partly it's education. So if people are going to use the system, hopefully the first 6 steps have got people to the point where they are at least interested in the system. They maybe haven't all seen it yet, but they're at least interested in it, and they have an idea of what the system's for. So one of the barriers then is them actually knowing how to use it. So Microsoft have been making some good inroads on this recently, probably the last year or so, I'd say. Things like SharePoint, especially SharePoint Online, and then more broader with Office 365. A lot of the newer things that have been coming out have been getting easier to use. And a lot of the existing things that we've had for a long time, like SharePoint, have been getting updates, and they've been being made easier to use. So easier to use to me means, for example, when I log in as a user, I don't see 100 buttons. I don't need 100 buttons. No one ever needs 100 buttons on one page. When I log in as a user, just trying to do my day-to-day work, I'm happy to see about 3 or 4 buttons, maybe 4 or 5 buttons at a push. And that's the way these new systems are going now, or the updates to the older systems. They're taking away these big menus that are full of functionality, and they're actually being simplified down. So for new users, when they see SharePoint, for example, or SharePoint Online today, it's much easier for them to get started using that today than it would have been, say, a year ago. So the challenges with that, updates to products always bring other challenges, but particularly for new users and quite often for existing users as well, the simplified software is helping them. So having said all that, that it's easier now than it ever has been, we still need to help people. Okay, so people understand that they want to use the system and we need to help them. So some of the things that we would do at Combined Knowledge is we would start to identify the people within the business that need to know more than they currently do. So it might be that some of the people with the biggest learning curve might be the people that are admins or the devs, the people that are going to install or maintain the systems, fix things if there's a problem, deal with support. Maybe the developers that are going to actually extend the systems, they're going to write code or use combinations of third-party products, which is all quite normal with the Microsoft stack to extend it. So those people we need to help. They have a gap from what they know at the minute to what they need to know to get full return of their products. So we'll see them in a moment. There might be a training team. So you might have an internal training team and they've been using old versions of the system and they're going to be rolling out like a training roadmap. They're going to be updating everyone else in the business. So those training team, they really need to know what's going on. And then as we come down, people need to know probably less and less. There's not such a high requirement. So site owners, for example, need to know a bit. We'll have to help them. Members of the site need to know something, but a bit less. And then visitors, people that are going to be just logging in and reading stuff, they also need to know a bit about the system as well. So we've got a whole load of methods that we could use to help them. So if I just show you, this is just very brief. It's not a big old sales pitch. It's very brief. So these are some of the things that we do at the moment with our customers. So again, a customer could be a multinational with 10,000 people, and they'll have their kind of training requirement that might span over 2 years. Or a company we work with could be like a charity that we worked with that's just got 20 people, mostly volunteers, and they just need to know the real basics of getting started. So we're kind of working with everyone at the minute. So methods that we would recommend, traditional methods still work really well. So whether that's a classroom-based session or an online session nowadays. So a lot of customers love online because they're all over the world and they don't have the expenses to fly or travel or stay in hotels anymore. There's restrictions on a lot of companies, so the online offers them the ability to do live sessions, but actually without visiting. And again, I'm not saying that you'd have to engage with us to do that. You might have a training team that can do that for you, right? You might just need to upskill your training team, and then they would roll out through Classroom or online. Some of the benefits of that traditional method, we can interact with people. So like today's a broadcast, whereas during an actual session, you'd all have microphones and be able to talk. We can give people books, so whether that's printed or electronic, people could do hands-on labs so they can practice things during the day. So we could provide environments. So if, for example, you didn't have an environment yet, but you're building one and you know what it's going to be like, we could create a mock environment that people could use. So just like a mock-up with your logo in, for example, if that was important, where people could practice during the session. And then another thing that a lot of guys are doing, so GM Financial were keen on this, was webinars. So like the session stage, like a 1 hour session, just as either as a discussion or just as a broadcast like we're doing today, just with someone that knows about the system, can demo it and can talk through what's going on. And typically those webinars then can be recorded like today's session is, and then other people could benefit from that recording for the next few months or years. Companies increasingly like the pre-recorded videos. I guess network speeds are fast nowadays and people are kind of impatient. They don't want to wait till the 3rd of April for a training session. They want it now. So for a lot of our customers, we're actually doing custom videos. So the one over here that you can see, I've muted the audio, but the one over here was actually for a customer that based in London, and they'd got quite a customized SharePoint environment, and the department they were working in had quite a high turnover. So there was lots of temps using it, for example, people that weren't going to be there for a long time. So they'd got into this rut where they'd constantly be doing training, constantly be doing these classroom sessions for a small number of people, and it meant for the training team it was stealing away a lot of their time, and it wasn't returning the value that they would have liked. That they had other things that they wanted to get around to that was going to have better impact on the business, bigger value. So we were able to listen to their requirements and put together a series of 10 videos, all very short videos, and then new starters or people that have not used the system for a while could go in and watch those videos. So this is what we call like a training plus style video. So that is me in there, and you can kind of get a feel for how that would work. Okay, so we do that with a lot of customers. We also do that in different languages as well. So that one was one language, but some that we've just been finishing before Christmas were actually in 6 different languages, including English. So that's something else we're doing with our customers. If you're a global, you need to think about that. How are people going to accept this stuff? Some countries we've found are happy with English, and that's the cheapest thing to do and the quickest. But other countries, just where English is not a language, they just don't. None of the guys speak it there. Having training materials in English is just not going to work. So we've worked with companies to deal with translation as well. And then the last little piece here that I'm just going to do a demo for, just before we move on to the next step, is just a very brief demo of how some of our products are also integrated within SharePoint and Office 365. So we're just going to do this for like 1 minute, and then we'll jump on. So a very brief example here. So something else that we've been doing that customers have been kind of enjoying recently is the training materials. We are able to build it into our SharePoint environments or our Office 365 environments. So for example, if someone was learning how to use SharePoint, so this is a traditional style SharePoint site. We also have products for the new experienced SharePoint sites as well. So if someone was coming into here and they were going into work in a document library, one of the things we're able to do is with our training materials, we can integrate them into SharePoint. So again, this at the moment that I'm in is a traditional SharePoint site. So this is how we'd see SharePoint 2013, and for most people SharePoint 2016. So we have these ribbons, and our support products can be connected into those ribbons and all sorts of other places within the system. So if I just click on one as a quick example, part of what a lot of customers like with these is that an end user could be in SharePoint or another part of Office 365. They could think, right, I'm in this library thing here. I just need to quickly know how to do something that's library related. And then what they're able to do is come in and they can just do a little bit of learning, and then they can jump straight back to where they were again. So it's not a full formal course. It's not a whole video. It's just some really short step-by-step. So for example, if I just drill down into a particular topic, so this is all training content that we've created, and we have this for a whole variety of products. Okay, so we work with other partners to generate content. All the SharePoint content we build in-house here because we're part of what we do is SharePoint specialists. And then very briefly, for each thing, people can see a step-by-step guide. That hopefully is all they needed, and then they go back and can carry on. So it's that quick satisfaction. They can do what they need to do and then carry on working. We also in these ones have more detail. So if they need to know a little bit more about not just how do I do it, but why am I doing it, what might go wrong, we have that as well. And then for each of these things, which we have thousands of now, there's also little videos. So these videos are non-audio. So these are just graphical videos. So this one's just checking out a file. And again, at the moment, this one's in a classical type of site, and the system's detected that, and it's actually showing the video that's based on a classical SharePoint site, classic site. So we do have videos also in the new experience as well. So people are able to go in, find what they need to find, and then they can step back out again. So typically now when we're working with a customer, they'll often take a variety of these products, and that combination will fulfill a large part of their training requirement. Okay, so again, we've worked with rollouts where we've trained everyone in the whole company, and we've worked with rollouts where we've just trained 2 or 3 key people and then they've cascaded down. So there's different ways we can do it. So I didn't really talk about all the different names of our products. I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the different things that we're finding people are liking at the moment. So everything from classroom to pre-recorded videos and step-by-steps. Okay, so for us as a training partner, that would mean if your kind of to-do list read anything like this, global rollouts, improve awareness, end-user training in 6 languages, we can facilitate that. So either we can create the stuff here or we can put you in touch with people that can. Okay, so that's probably enough for that. That's kind of my favorite bit. That's what I get to do all the time. So last couple of minutes, last few points here. So be available to support. So we worked with someone the other day from a charity, and one of the funniest things she said to us was she was the trainer for the charity, and she was also the kind of evangelist for SharePoint. And she said in her schedule, when they went live with SharePoint about 2 years ago, she kind of booked out January and February for SharePoint training. Well, that was 2 years ago, and she still hadn't finished the SharePoint training because it was never ending. As soon as she thought she trained everyone, there'd be a new starter, or the people that she trained already had come back a few months later and said, well, we want to know a bit more now. We see all these other buttons and we see this team that are using it more. So things like the training and the adoption is never ending. So not just because of new starters, but for lots of reasons. And it's not just training, it's support in terms of if things go wrong, or it's support in terms of if people want to do things but they're not allowed to, who do they call? So having a whole team or structure that people know about. So there could be a SharePoint or Office 365 team. They could be a point of contact, making sure people have their names, phone numbers, link IDs, whatever, sorry, Skype IDs. There could be a help desk, knowing that help desk that you normally call is also going to help you with Office 365 if that's the case. It could be super users, site owners, members, and there could even be a pyramid of, like, if you ask these guys and if they don't know, they'll ask these guys, but just making sure that everyone in the business knows that. There could be a page, an email, a blog that tells people this is the process. These are the team that are in place. So if you ever have a problem, not that you have yet, these are the guys that are going to sort it out. So people feel comfort in that, even if they don't use it yet. And again, it's never ending. So one thing you can do if you're part of that training team or super user team is to write down the answers. So rather than having the same questions every week, and the next time someone asks you the same question, taking a deep breath and rolling your eyes and then kindly telling them the answer, what you can do is you can say, actually, it's interesting you asked me that. You're the 100th person that asked that. And actually, I've got this Word document here or this blog post here that has the answer. And I'll share that with you. So capture that knowledge. It takes a bit longer at first, but it will pay dividends. So whether that's a SharePoint site, whether it's a Yammer group, whether it's a community portal or community site, there's loads of ways you can do it in SharePoint and Office 365. The system itself includes these sorts of pages and links and tables where we can capture this knowledge and make it available to people. So it's also a way of encouraging people to use the system if the help information that you create is in there. So again, even before people use the support, just that if they know it's been thought about and it's in place, then it gives them a comfort, that everything's well thought out and that this is a good system to be using. So last couple of minutes, because I know we're just running out of time. Don't double up, really easy one. I think there's like 2 points on this. So if you leave for people all the old systems still in place, they will never stop using them. So if you've still got all the old network drives and you've still got all the old intranets and all the old expense claim systems, people are going to use them forever. So assuming that the new system replaces parts of the old system, people should know that, and actually the next one's going to help us with moving them over. Timescale. So if they know that the old part of the system is going to be removed and they know it's going to be removed on the 3rd of January and there's no arguments and no exceptions, doesn't matter who you are or who you know or what anyone else told you, there's this schedule, and on the 3rd of February the old system will be gone. Yeah, so that is a pretty good motivation. We don't want the timescales though to be too unrealistic, otherwise we're just going to cause panic, and all of the other work we've put in the first 9 steps could be a waste of time, because at this point basically people say I'm too busy and I'm going to stop this, and then they'll be trying to go up to the directors and trying to push everything back. So as long as we're giving people plenty of time, we're often in a rush to give people the new software because we know it's good and we believe it's going to save them time and save them money. But actually if we try and rush as we get into the go live, then it's not going to be helpful for anyone. Not good for us as the kind of IT side or the training side. It's not good for the end users either. People need to know for all the steps, when will things start and finish? If the pilot has no end date, how will people know when to stop? So again, that victim of its own success with these pilots that have been going for 9 years now, which is kind of funny, but you know, the problem was set when the pilot went live nine years ago, 10 years ago, and no one maybe set an end date or a scope. And again, getting rid of those network drives, not fully, but maybe telling people we're going to run a scan of the network drives, and these are the things that should be left on it. So there's certain things that are acceptable to be on there, but other things are not. Yeah, and we're going to scan them, and then again, whether you use some software or whether you manually do that and just look for some of the worst offenders to pick them out and sort those guys out. But definitely having timescales against all of it and having that quite public makes it real for people. Otherwise, it's just a nice idea that will never land, and again, they'll have no urgency. So the good news is, whether you're going to SharePoint, whether you're doing an upgrade, whether you're going to Office 365 in some variation, I think all those considerations should put you in good stead. So some of those are to reduce stragglers, so adoption happens earlier, and other areas are to improve the amount of functionality that people actually use, because we don't just want them logging in doing the minimum. We want them to really push the limits of the system and get all the bells and whistles working. We want to see all the exciting new things used, as well as the basic minimum document management stuff. Okay, so those are our 10 steps. There was a couple of questions came in earlier. One of them was, can we get access to these slide decks? So yeah, the actually better than the slides, the whole video is going to be shared with you again. So it'll probably take a couple of days, so we have to grab it and publish it. But not only this video, but if I go back to the beginning, the videos from all of the sessions in this series. So we've got 4 different companies working in this series. So we've got Point Solutions, Lightning Tools, the What Solutions Factory, and then myself here at Combined Knowledge. So yeah, so all those videos are going to be made available to you. So you should get an email within the next few days. Right, let me just jump to the end here. There we go. So the very last slide I've got, and apologies for overrunning by just a couple of minutes there. The very last slide is just to invite any questions. So you can either get me at rob@combined-knowledge.com. So you can get me there. Because I'm often out with customers, I might not reply straight away. So if you want to actually get in touch with someone immediately because you're desperate to talk about adoption or training or anything around that whole piece, you know, whether it's HR related or not, then you can get the office number here, this 014 55 200 520. So there's always someone here in the office, even if I'm not based here. There's someone in the team that will be able to talk to you. Okay. And again, even if it's not about the training piece, if you're doing anything around Office 365 or SharePoint, we've got some great partnerships here, and we've been in the industry for over 10 years. So we can put you in touch with all sorts of people that can help you. And then we've got a general sales email address as well. So if you do want to talk about prices or dates for training courses or anything like that, then again, you can either get in touch with me or the sales account there. So thanks very much for joining me today. Hopefully it was interesting. I've gone through, I'm just going to have a look through the questions window again. I think we've answered most of the questions that came up. Let me just have a quick look, because there's a few that came past right at the start of the session. Yeah, I think we've answered most of the questions. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll stay in the session just for a few more minutes, just in case there's any further questions. But I'll just say once again, thanks very much for joining us today. I hope this webinar series has proved to be useful for you. And if I jump back to one other slide there, so remember we do have coming up some more sessions that are going to be kind of similar to this in terms of what they're talking about, but actually we've got different sessions and different people speaking. So over in Edinburgh on the 24th of February, and then in London on the 9th of May. And again, we'll send through to you guys some more details of where they are and when they are. So I know some of those things are not going to be local to all of you, but those are some of the next things that we've got going on around this same area, around this same business topics. Excellent, great. So thanks very much for all the lovely feedback. So thank you very much. And again, do feel free to get in touch with me. I'll just put the email addresses and the phone numbers back up. So yeah, if you do want to get in touch with me, the email address is probably the best way to do it. Perfect. Great. So if that's everyone happy, I'm going to end the session there. Thank you very much.